Apprehend God in all things, for God is in all things. Every single creature is filled with God and is a book about God. Amen. I want to start with thanking you and everyone who sent in the very personal stories of God's presence in your life and their life. If we really could do this, pull it off, I would just do an interactive thing. And you'd stand up and you'd tell your story, and we'd be in awe. And that would be cool, right? Except for that won't work. So I'm going to try to take your stories and blend them together into something. All right? And it's something very precious and personal. All of these stories are. They reflect how is it that we're going to talk about God together? How do we do that? And the best way to do that, in my opinion, is through personal experience. Your personal experience, my personal experience. Right? And so much of the personal experience has to do with how we see the world, how we're looking at life, what's catching our attention, what's not. So in order for this to be just a little bit interactive, I'm going to say things like, "You get me?" And you have to at least nod. So you get me? Okay, cool. All right. So in order to kind of set that framework of seeing, because the whole gospel thing was about seeing, and our collect for the day was about seeing the presence of God in life, I'm going to tell you a story, okay? Okay. So, one beautiful morning, 3 people walked down to the edge of the ocean. And each of them were going down there to see the sunrise. The first person saw just the immense physical beauty of the sunrise, just how beautiful it was. And that person felt happy. And that was it. They went about their day. The next person enjoyed the beauty, all the beauty that the first person saw. But that person also thought about, as he was watching the sunrise, he also thought about the cyclical rotation of the earth and how he really wasn't seeing a sunrise, but he was actually seeing the rotation of the earth on its axis as it orbits the sun. You with me? Okay. So he was happy with and impressed with being able to see what's really happening. Okay? And then there's the third person. Third person saw the beauty of the first person, and she also saw the complexity of the second person, the complexity of what we're actually seeing. But she also experienced something that I'm going to call awe, A-W-E. Awe. Not awe, you know? So the big awe, all right? She experienced awe. And she experienced awe because she realized somehow or another, as she watched this sunrise, she realized that she is connected to and a part of a mystery that is greater than herself. She is connected to and part of a mystery that's greater than herself. And this experience produced a rush of feelings. Feelings of peace, feelings of joy, majesty, wonder, just to name a few. In that moment, as she watched what happens every single day, as she watched that, the sun shone just deeper and brighter. The colors were more brilliant. The ocean reflected this beautiful, glorious light. And she realized she is a part of it all. She's a part of all of it. And in that state, in that place of deep feeling, of deep connection, of deep awe, she saw God. You get me? Okay. You know who those three people are? They're you. And they're me. They're us. We are all these people at some point in our lives. You see, what I mean by that is each of us sees the world, if we're paying attention at all. If we're not paying attention, we usually don't see anything. But if we're paying attention, each of us sees the world in one of these three ways somehow. And that's what these personal stories are all about. How people see the world, and in seeing the world, saw and experienced God's presence in their lives. Because as all the Easter songs sing over and over and over again, God is alive. Christ is alive. Alive, alive, alive. God is not a separate concept or being sitting up in the clouds, waiting for the good people to come meet him. God is an ever-present spirit, an ever-present reality that's always with us. You get me? Okay, cool. And these stories, you see, these stories reflect that. These stories reflect what I hope you can feel as my passion about this. So in order to get them across, they're their words, so I want to use their words, okay? Well, it doesn't matter if you care. I mean, I'm going to do it. So it's like this story. Here's a good one. Here, they're all good, but this one really hits what I'm talking about. It starts like this. This might sound odd, but when my dad died, we went to the funeral home to finalize details of the arrangements of his burial. It had been a gloomy, cloudy day, and after leaving the funeral home, the finality of the situation was setting in. On the way home that evening, the sun began shining through the clouds in a way I had never seen before. The sky had, for a few moments, the most beautiful golden hue. I told my wife it was a heavenly light. A heavenly light. It was almost overwhelming. It was so beautiful. And he goes on, I know there's a natural explanation for it. But in my mind, at that time, I felt God's presence in a powerful way. That light came to me at a time when I really needed a sense of peace. And somebody else echoes that exact same thing. She puts it this way. I experienced the presence of God at my lowest point in my life. But while I was in this low place, instead of feeling bad or angry, I felt an incredible sense of strength and peace despite my present circumstances. There was no good reason for me to feel strong or peaceful. But those feelings have never been so clear. It was overwhelming. Okay. Pretty cool. Any comments? All right, save them for afterwards. Because what the stories show, I hope you can see, is God's presence is with us. It's always with us. The question is, can we open our eyes wide enough to see and experience the living God. Often God's presence, as you know, if you've experienced it, has kind of an uncanny and mysterious feel. It's like this story. As I sat by the bedside of my father-in-law, he began taking what would be his last breaths. In that moment, a couple of things happened simultaneously. A picture frame that was running random pictures suddenly stopped. It stopped on a picture of his wife. She had died a long time ago. But in the picture, she was young, and I had the feeling she was waiting for him to come join her. Then, a strong wind came rushing from nowhere down through the valley. The wind bent the trees, it was so strong. We had the windows open for the mountain breezes to come through, so that wind blew through the room. He left us on that wind. It was surreal. Everyone felt God's presence and comfort. It just reinforced to me that if I look for signs of God's presence, they are always there. They're always there. Now, sometimes God's presence has that uncanny, mysterious feel, and sometimes it's really kind of hard to comprehend. Like this. I have experienced the presence of God twice at St. John's. I'm sure more than that, but this twice in this way. It's got to be more than twice. But twice is good. All right, we'll go with that. So, twice at St. John's. Both of the experiences were at the altar rail. My experience, he says, is a bright blast of light that shoots from my head deep into me. A bright blast of light that shoots from my head deep into me. I can't recreate the experience even when I try. A true road to Damascus experience. When it's done, he says, I feel vibrant and refreshed. Sometimes God's presence is less dramatic than a light like that, but no less powerful. Like this. If I shut up, I see God everywhere. I see God blowing through the trees. I see God in a baby's laughter. I see God in my wife's smile. And I see God floating under the sea, hearing the fish clean the coral, seeing the waving of the sea fans, and feeling the peacefulness being under the ocean provides. God's presence is everywhere. God's presence is everywhere. God is alive. Sometimes God's presence is felt through other people. It's like other people carry that presence to us. Someone wrote this, I can feel God's presence in the beautiful smiles of the little children as they fly their paper airplanes made from the bulletins at St. John's. I can feel God's love when my friends call me when I'm lonely or they tell me they need me. In my darkest days, even at times it was probably not appropriate, I met God in the most wonderful, silly, delightful friends who always helped me to laugh. And another person said this, growing up, I was very fortunate to live in Knoxville with both of my grandmothers close by. My dad's mother was a Bible expert and wanted me to be familiar with it. So she had me memorize a lot, and I loved it. My other grandma was very social. She loved to entertain. She was a fabulous gardener and flower arranger. I often say, she said, I had a Bible grandmother and a martini grandmother. I love them both dearly. I thank God for these two women who taught me God is always with us, with arms wide open, just like theirs. And I could go on, but I'll just end it this way. The life-giving presence of God, the Spirit of God, is always with us. It's with us, it's in us, it's all around us, manifesting God's self as life, in life, and through life, and as life. I hope to God that you see God today. Amen.